100 Huntley Street, Toronto, Ontario, M4Y2L1, or in the USA box 486, Niagara Falls, New York, 14302. Ask David for his dad's book. And I tell you, it's even got a poem he wrote about Guess Who. I mean, how... Someone say, well, that's kind of corny. Well, read it and then decide, all right? We have a minister and his wife, ordained minister in the United Church of Canada. He's from Barrie, Ontario. In fact, he was a member of the committee of this denomination that has put forward a report concerning the ordination of homosexuals. It's created quite a bit of controversy. Now, we're not here to engage in debate or controversy. We're here to have a personal testimony. And by the way, we'll be giving phone numbers, a toll-free number in Canada, a toll-free number in the U.S., a little later on for Homosexuals Anonymous. And so that'll be an 800 number, so make sure you have pencil, paper ready. In fact, we'll give the address of Reverend John Howard. Will you welcome right now, please, Reverend John and Vicki Howard. John, did you breathe kind of a sigh of relief when I said we're not here to have a debate or something like that, but just to hear your personal story?
Yes, David, I did.
Let's have it. Where does it start?
Well, David, I became a Christian when I was 15 and was baptized in the Holy Spirit at the same time as well. And that was just a tremendous experience of coming to know Jesus personally. Right. But already in my life, there were the seeds from childhood and in my teenage years of homosexual attraction. I didn't really recognize that or realize what it was at that time, but it was there. And right. Even though I was a Christian, as I continued to develop in my adolescence and as my sexuality developed, I discovered that there was this attraction, this sexual attraction towards other guys and other men. I didn't think that it was good or right, and so I tried to kind of deny it within myself. Yeah. But I found that I just couldn't get rid of it. It was just there. Yeah. And having become a Christian, I believed that deep within myself that this wasn't what God wanted for my life. And I believed that the Bible said as well that homosexual behavior wasn't of God. And yet somehow there was an attractiveness, there was an excitement about this within my life. So on the one hand, I was kind of saying, Lord, take this away from me. Right. I really don't want it in my life. And yet on the other hand, there was this attractiveness and this feeling within me, well, don't take it away yet, because there's some enjoyment here. So there's this struggle going on in my life. I met Vicki, and we met in high school, and I guess it never really occurred to me that I wouldn't marry or shouldn't marry. That seemed to be the normal and natural thing to do. I thought perhaps that maybe if I did marry, that this homosexual struggle might go away, but it really didn't. It just continued, and it got stronger. In fact, I'm afraid I have to confess that in much of Vicki's and my own love life, in terms of our own sexual relationship, that so often my means of becoming sexually aroused was by having a homosexual fantasy go on in my mind. And I realize now that in many ways that was just using Vicki sexually, and I feel very, very ashamed of that.
Were you aware of this, Vicki?
I didn't have a clue. I wasn't aware at all. We had known each other since high school. We had dated for a number of years. And I had committed my life to John. I didn't have a clue at all, no.
At what point did you must have found it out? Did he tell you? Is that how you found it out?
I guess it must have been about 4 years ago that John told me that he had this struggle.
How long have you been married now?
We've been married 20 years this year. And
so for 16 of those years, you didn't have a clue that this was going on?
And we have 3 children, but I wasn't aware. I knew that our sex life wasn't the greatest, but I didn't think it was that bad. So I was totally oblivious.
Well, this struggle was going on within me all the time, and David, so much of it was in my mind. You know, as I think of the fantasy life that I had, even though I was a Christian and I was a pastor, there was this area of my life that was totally hidden to other people. And I thought, you know, because I could have these thoughts and fantasies go on in my mind, I thought I could control it. But unfortunately, it's just like an addiction that keeps getting worse and worse, and I became addicted to homosexual pornography. Rarely would I buy any magazines, but I found it extremely difficult to be able to stay out of porno shops. I found as I went into these stores, it would just be as though a huge magnet was there drawing me into these stores, and I was powerless over it. I would go into the stores and I would pore over these magazines, and I could memorize the pictures, and then later I would go home and I would bring back these pictures into my mind and fantasize about these relationships and having relationships with men. I was really torn up inside, and I found that this was leading me closer and closer to homosexual behavior. In fact, once coming back from a meeting, I flew into Winnipeg late one night, and my plane was delayed, so I couldn't leave, and ended up having a homosexual encounter in Winnipeg at that time. I felt extremely guilty about it and very shamed, and I vowed at that point, Lord, I don't want to do this ever again. Please help me. Take this away from me. But the struggle continued.
Let me just ask, had you had an encounter as a child?
No, I hadn't.
So you'd never had an encounter?
Never had a homosexual encounter as a child, no. So the struggle was going on. The desire was very powerful. After we moved down to Barrie, I found that it kept getting worse, and I realized it seemed that I was coming closer and closer to becoming involved. It was either going to be in public washrooms or in public parks, the kind of scenes where so many homosexual men do become involved and often become exposed then and arrested. And it was as if God was telling me, John, look, if you don't reach out to somebody for help, you're at a fork in the road. And if you don't reach out for help, then you're going to carry on doing what you're doing. And eventually you'll be caught, you'll lose your job, you'll lose your family. On the other hand, if you reach out for help, then there is hope for healing. Well, I was so ashamed and so afraid of rejection within myself that I really didn't want to turn to anybody. I didn't feel I could. But about that time in our church, I was involved with a number of groups, actually diet groups, and I was involved as a spiritual support person for these diet groups, and we would meet every couple of weeks with the group of leaders, and it was a very, very good support group, but I never shared any of the things that was going on in my life with the homosexual struggle. Two of the women in those groups were very perceptive, and they could tell that there was something going on within me, even though they didn't know. And one Friday afternoon, they came up to me after our meeting, they said, John, we just want you to know that we love you, and we sense that there's a real struggle going on in your life. And if and when you're ready to talk about it, we're here. Well, that really scared me because I felt, it's becoming really apparent to everybody, this struggle that I'm going through. And I just brushed them off. I said, no, nothing wrong with me, thanks, and just went on my way. Well, the very following week, I had to come down to Toronto again to do some hospital visiting, and even though before I left, I prayed and I said, Lord, keep me out of bookstores. I failed again and went home feeling very much ashamed. And I realized then that I had to reach out and call these two women. Well, I called them and we set up an appointment the following Friday. And for a whole afternoon, I just poured out my whole story with them. And they cried with me, they listened to me, they cared for me. And they committed themselves to meeting with me. I think it was every 2 weeks. And we met for about a year. And as we prayed together and as we talked together, the Lord really showed us the sources of those feelings that I'd had that had become addictive for me. And we began to pray for the healing of memories, for the healing of the hurts, the healing and the meeting of the needs, the deep needs that were in my life, by which I had turned subconsciously towards homosexuality. I began to realize that the Lord had His way, His healthy way of meeting those needs in my life. And so I began to discover it was a very gradual sort of healing for me, but very, very good. I brought just a little sheet with me that I thought I would read.
Yes.
I got this out of a magazine, and these words were written by a man named John from Pennsylvania, but he talked about the struggle, how his healing was a gradual thing. It took time, and it just related so much to my own healing. He says, and so I felt that God would not help me. I was sure that He was disgusted with me, and if I could not help myself, there was no help. I was wrong, of course. The problem was not with God. My sin did not dim His love. My guilt was not too great for Christ's blood and righteousness. I was right then to turn to him, but wrong in my expectations of him. I expected God to deliver all at once. He was waiting to heal me over time. This was not to torment me, but to teach me, to enable me to learn lessons about God, about myself, and about others, which are enriching me immeasurably. I expected God to deliver me without anyone else, just the two of us. He wanted to deliver me through his people. My problem was relational. It is a result of pulling away. Its solution is relational. I must learn to reach out. I demanded, ignorantly, a miracle. God wanted to use means. I expected God to do the extraordinary. He was waiting to work in me the ordinary. To admit powerlessness is not, of course, a once-and-for-all act. It's a daily decision to reach out to God and to others when lonely, frightened, stressed, hurting, in need. That really spoke to me, David, because, for years, for a 20-year period, I had asked God, to change me, to change my feelings, just to kind of wipe them out and get rid of them. And yet that didn't happen. And it wasn't until, thankfully, two people reached out to me in love, and then I was given the courage to be able to reach out to them for help, that really began the healing process within me.
I think that we ought to, just before I ask you, Vicki, to respond to, how you found out and how you, were able to cope and then support, in this team effort, because obviously this is a teamwork that God has done here. But let's give those 800 numbers now for Homosexuals Anonymous in Canada, 1-800-327-1300. In the U.S., 1-800-253-3000. Now, you work with these groups, don't you?
I'm very much in favor of the Homosexuals Anonymous program,
yeah.
Yes.
So just leave the numbers up for just a moment there. People are jotting them down. In Canada, 1-800-327-1300. In the United States, 1-800-253-3000. If anyone wants to call in for prayer on our regular counseling phones, we can refer you over to this group or to the Howard's at Collier Street United Church in Barrie, where you're Minister of Christian Education.
That's right.
And your senior minister is supporting you in this ministry to people, to see people delivered from their homosexuality like you have been by the Lord. And so that's just Collier Street United Church Barrie, and the Reverend Howard would be sufficient, I suppose, to get you. And by the way, did you know that there was a body of literature that even existed?
Well, I didn't, David. When I was going through my own struggle, I had no awareness that there was Christian material available for people struggling with homosexuality. And it wasn't until after I became, had received a measure of healing myself and attended a conference in Vancouver called Hope and Healing for the Homosexual, that I really became aware of this, and this is very helpful.
And so you would be able to recommend, if folks write to you,
that's right,
just in care of Collier Street, C-O-L-L-I-E-R, maybe we have an address that we can put up there, to the Reverend Howard at Collier Street United Church, Barrie, Ontario, L4M1H3. Now, Vicki, that must have been really something when you found out about this. It was a surprise, to say the very least.
It was a real shock. I hadn't a clue. And to be quite honest, at first I was really hurt. Hurt more, I guess, because John hadn't felt free to share with me the struggle that he was going through.
But he had shared with these two ladies that had approached him offering to help.
Yeah. And so that kind of hurt that I hadn't been available to him. I guess, too, because it was a struggle with homosexuality, it was a situation where I really didn't know what I could do. It wasn't something that I could do on my own. I think God's really neat the way he does things like that. If it had been a matter of him having a relationship with another woman, I probably would have been concerned about superficial things, like the way I looked. Maybe I was too heavy. Maybe if I made myself more attractive, I would do things like that to fight back. But how can you fight? How can a woman fight a man's attraction to another man? So I couldn't do anything myself, and I really had to turn over to God. And I guess I really claimed Romans 8:28, the Lord works for good to
Those who love you.
Yeah.
to those who love the Lord. I always get confused there. I really had
But
to
you're not
claim
confused
that.
in the
No,
fact that
no,
it works.
that it works. It really does
It
work.
really works.
I really had to claim God's protection and God's guidance because I couldn't do it on my own. And I just had to pray and ask God to heal John, to heal our relationship, to give me the faith to continue. I guess the saving thing in all of that was that I knew that John was struggling and that he wanted to change. We've talked about it since, and I don't think I would have stayed in a relationship if John had wanted to continue in relationships with men, because I made a commitment to a marriage. And just like I wouldn't have stayed in a marriage where he was having an affair with another woman, sex outside of marriage, according to scriptures, is wrong.
Period.
Period.
Yeah.
But as long as he was willing to struggle and seek healing, then I was there to support as much as possible.
Now, I'd like you just to kind of draw this to a conclusion. I've often said television is just headlines, John.
Right.
You've got to get it. People got to write to you if they want the fine print. That's 4 years ago.
Well, 5 years ago, 83, when I began.
1983.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At what point did the Lord bring you that deliverance? You said it was over a period of time, but at what point would you say, yes, he really has set me free?
Well, it's been a gradual process,
Can you
David.
say right now?
I can't say there was one specific moment.
Can you
I
say right now, you are
yes,
set free?
I have been set free. That doesn't mean that I will never have homosexual temptation. Jesus himself was tempted.
Yeah.
But I know how to handle the temptation now.
And he has
of the
kept
victory of
you
Christ.
true to your wife, to your vows,
yeah.
since that point?
Mm-hmm.
And he's dealing with the mind hang-ups?
That's right. Yeah, very much. In Romans 12, 1 and 2, it talks about the renewing of the mind. And this has been a real key to just know how to reframe my thinking, getting rid of the fantasies, allowing Christ to take control of my thoughts.
And we're doing it together. I think that's the other thing. We're doing it together. It's not John on his own or me on my own, but we're a team.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah.
David, I think that the Lord has really given these two precious people a great deal of courage
Yes.
to be able to come on a television show,
Yeah.
explain that they had a problem, how the Lord has healed them from it, and that's going to give other people who have a problem.
Absolutely. His mercy, Diane.
That's right.
His mercy endureth
Endureth
forever. You know,
forever.
there's one of the Psalms of David.
That's right.
Every second verse, the whole psalm.
mercy endureth
His mercy
forever.
endureth forever.
Right.
Let all the people of Israel say, His mercy endureth forever. Whatever the problem. And don't please make one thing worse than the other. We're all sinners in need of the grace and forgiveness of God. All we have to do is ask Him. Norma Jean, my wife, and the 100 Huntley Street Singers have a song called I Need Thee. Every hour. It's not only every day, it's every hour, John. Do you need him for some area of your life? Go ahead and ask him. God bless you as you sing.